What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of Get a Grip with Kendall Roosing. We are here with an outstanding guest. Wow, I've lost my English. Rafael Lovato, the one and only, somebody I've looked up to for a very long time. I've been very inspired by, and I've gotten to know pretty well. Was able to even teach at his school and just teach alongside. And what an honor for me to have you here on the podcast, especially as one of our very first guests. Thank you. I want to start in before you even say anything and make sure you guys know who you are listening to. Rafael Lovato is one of the most incredible jiu-jitsu and MMA competitors of all time. In jiu-jitsu alone, he won the world championships in the gi. He won the no-gi world championships. He's a 2-time European champion, 2-time Pan American champion, 2-time Brazilian Nationals champion, and an Abu Dhabi World Cup champion, and an ADCC finalist. Along with that, he's actually the first American to ever win the Euros, Pans, or Brazilian Nationals at the male black belt division, which really made history at the time, and it's something that a lot of American athletes have looked up to in jiu-jitsu, which including myself, which has been really special. He also has an extensive MMA career, going 10 out of 10 with two TKOs and 6 submission wins, and is an undefeated Bellator champion at middleweight. So that is quite a long introduction, but it's very well deserved. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Congrats on launching the podcast, and I'm so just excited for you and grateful that you thought of me for being one of your first guests.
Yeah, amazing. Of course. That was like top of my list. I was super excited that you're able to come on. So also want to let you guys know in the audience, since this is one of our first episodes, I do have she's a lot of things. She's a producer now, fancy. You could like pop we could just show you off. Oh my gosh, look at that face. Producer, she's like my extra external hard drive, my RAM we discovered. Yeah, processing speed, and also just an angel. So she'll be here if you see her laughing. I'm gonna make sure try to keep her quiet. But if she gets out of line, she knows she's gonna help with anything behind the scenes. So
And
as
she
we jump in
is,
here about
she is
and
Sula. You got to say her name.
and she is
You can say my name too.
That really just shows our relationship here that I didn't even feel it. She is one of the best, my
Thank
best
you,
friends in the whole
Professor,
world.
for
Yeah.
recognizing that I have a name.
Thank you.
Hi guys.
She goes by many other names in my home. Anyway. Okay. So as we jump in here, I'm super excited that you're here. You're not only an amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner and MMA legend, but you have some very unique stories to tell, which is why I was so excited to have you on. You're also a really successful entrepreneur, a highly sought-after instructor, a new dad, husband, son, and just someone who I've admired from afar for having a really big emphasis on your relationships. I think that really comes across so clearly to me, and also on self-development and personal well-being. So that's been really inspiring to me over the years. So before we jump in, I have a question that I ask all the guests. So the podcast is called Get a Grip. So when you think about having a grip on your life and like really having it together, what does that mean to you?
Oh, well, that's a great question. And I did have to think about that for a second because, I didn't know exactly what my individual response to that would be right off the bat, but it came to me, and I think it's the best way to live life is just having an attitude of gratitude, really, understanding how precious life is, how special, every moment, every opportunity, every day that we have is, and using that to help you give your absolute best in everything that you do, and trying your best to make a positive impact as you do it, on all of those around you. So I think, like I said, like getting a grip, or like you said, getting a grip on your life means just understanding, how precious it is, and from there, just giving everything you have, and having that unbreakable positive spirit. That's what I think getting a grip is.
Beautiful. I love it. Perfect. Okay, so now let's dive into the juice. Let's talk about your life. Can you give us the 10-minute story, or approximate like life story of Rafael Lovato Jr. from start to finish, where you are
Okay.
now.
Um, yeah, let me just try to get through it real quick. So I was born in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio. My dad was a professional organist at the time, and he was an assistant instructor at a Jeet Kune Do martial arts school in Cincinnati. My mom was working at a retirement home, and I ended up spending a lot of time with my dad early on in those days due to my mom's schedule. And I would follow him to practice playing the organ, and then I would follow him to the academy where he taught and trained at. And I was one of those kids that was over off on the side playing with my GI Joes and whatever action figures that I had while my dad was training and watching him as well. Um, and as soon as I could walk and move, he was training and teaching me martial arts at home off to the side. Um, we have videos of me like 3, 4 years old, training for like hours. Him holding the mitts for me and just
Hmm.
like yeah, that's how we bonded. And obviously, I was looking up to my dad. I was watching him train since I was little, so um, I uh, like always wanted to just do what he did. He was my first hero, and so there was no question that I was going to be training. Once I was 4, I started doing classes at that same school, kids classes. The kids classes that they had were Kempo. So the first like structured martial arts training that I did as a kid was Kempo, believe it or not. And it was a JKD school, so they offered a lot of different martial arts there. And obviously, still training with my dad at home. We lived in Cincinnati until I was 8 years old, and then we moved to Oklahoma. My mom is from Oklahoma, and
Hmm.
basically, it was just kind of like my parents needing a change. Um, they didn't really have too many great relationships there in Ohio, and
Hmm.
it was like the quality of life, for um, the money that you put in is was just much higher to come down here to Oklahoma.
Hmm.
Your money could just go a lot further, and we lived in an apartment. We never had a home, and so they really wanted a home, and so we moved to Oklahoma. But it was really tough in the beginning. Just picking up and starting a new life. Um, my father then started working as a physical therapist, and we stayed with my mom's parents, my grandparents, for a while. And he began teaching a martial arts class at the hospital where he worked at as a physical therapist. And it didn't take long
They let him.
for
They let him teach martial arts as a physical therapist. Oh, that's so
yes,
cool.
yeah,
Wow.
it was just like a almost like a PE kind of class, right? For people to come in and
Hmm.
move
Hmm.
and get a workout, but they were learning, legitimate martial arts from my father, and it didn't take long for that class to fill up, to where there was 20,
Right.
30 people. They didn't really have room, and then he uh, like set up his garage to be a training garage, right? Everyone has the garage story, or at least all the old school people have the garage
Yeah.
story. Um,
Hmm.
so the ones that were like a little more dedicated and want to get more training, he would invite over to the house. They would train in the garage, and then finally he was like, you know what? Um, I need to open my school. That was his first passion was music. His second passion was martial arts. I don't know. He might those could maybe flip depending on the day that you talk to him. But
Yeah.
those were his passions. He was an artist as a musician, and an artist as a martial artist. And
Mm.
so he was like, "All right, this is it. Let me open up my own school." So we actually moved out of the house that we had, which was just like a duplex. It was really small, and then we were without a home again, back into my grandparents because he put everything into opening up his own martial arts school. And so
Right.
he would actually sleep at the school, and I would stay with my grandparents. My mom would sometimes stay with him, sometimes she would stay at the grandparents with me. And there were even several nights where I slept at the school with them too. Um, and he just invested everything he had. It was a completely different landscape at that time for martial arts. It was not the
Especially in
popular thing.
Oklahoma.
Yes, yes. Yeah, totally, totally. Um, so it was not the popular thing. So, having a Jeet Kune Do school at that time, nobody knew what it was, right? And then through Jeet Kune Do, he
Mm.
discovered Jiu-Jitsu at the annual Jeet Kune Do Instructors Conference that they held in California. He discovered Jiu-Jitsu. They brought the Gracies one year. So Jeet Kune Do was just way ahead of its time. They understood mixed martial arts, that you had to train multiple martial arts. They understood all the ranges of martial arts. So there was weapons, there were kicking arts, like of course Muay Thai, kickboxing, also Savat. They use Savat kicks very frequently. Bruce Lee was famous for a lot of Savat kicks. and
Right.
um, and then boxing. We trained boxing, and then as we got closer, there was the trapping range, Wing Chun. So I did a lot of Wing Chun when I was a kid as well. So there was the trapping range, and then there was like the clinching, and that ended up being the ground fighting. And the ground fighting
Mm.
that we did back in those days was like catch as catch can, shoot fighting. It was really rough. It was not that
Yeah.
technical, more like strength based, but we did understand that ground fighting was important before we even knew about jiu-jitsu. And so understanding how ground fighting was important, the Jeet Kune Do crew, the kind of the ones, the Bruce Lee's top students, the ones that were leading Jeet Kune Do after Bruce Lee passed, they discovered the Gracies, and they brought the Gracies in to teach at an instructors conference. And my dad, he is not built like me whatsoever. Back in those days, when he was in his late 30s and all that, he was like 140 pounds. And so he was a small guy, like a
Oh
featherweight,
wow.
lightweight. And then he, was learning jujitsu from the Gracies, and even met Elio Gracie, and he could see, their size
Wow.
and how amazing the technique and the art was, and he fell in love with it right away. And he was so excited to come back and share it with me, and that was it. Like, it changed everything. We eventually transitioned from being a Jeet Kune Do school to a Jiu-Jitsu school, and he was traveling to California to learn Jiu-Jitsu. Keep in mind that he doesn't fly, so he was driving, and
Wow.
he could only get there like a couple, 2, 3 times a year because of how far it was, and the fact that he also had the business to run. And then he got a call one day. He trained with the Gracies. The next year, he trained with the Machado brothers, and they were all
Mm.
there in California. And he really loved the Machado brothers. And then he got a call one day, and it was Carlos Machado calling my dad to tell him, "Hey, I'm moving to Dallas, Texas." Chuck Norris was their student, and Chuck
Wow.
Norris was bringing Carlos to Texas so he could continue training while he was filming the Walker Texas Rangers show. And
Oh my
and
gosh.
so Chuck brought Carlos to this area of the country, and that changed everything for us. Carlos came like at the end of '95, early '96. It was right around that time. I was like 12, 13, and that was a game changer. Now my dad only had to drive 3.5 hours to Dallas versus 20
Yeah.
something hours to LA. And
Wow.
and
And
so
how many
then
times had he been with them in LA, like at the time that this happened? Like he had been going a couple times a year for a couple years, or?
Yeah, it was like a couple of
Okay.
years.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
but he had gone there several times, and he even did the Pan Am's
Oh wow.
in '96, I believe.
Oh, that's
But
amazing. So cool.
Carlos was already here, but the main
Yeah.
Machado team was based in LA, so he still went to LA early, trained with the team, and then competed in the Pan Am's. Um, but um, but yeah, and so then my first lesson with Carlos, like I said, I was around 12, 13. It's hard for me to remember exactly, but it was shortly after he
Yeah.
moved to Texas. I want to say it was early '96. And and my dad did a private lesson with him, and he took me with him. And we, I was like the partner, and I got to learn from Carlos and train with Carlos. And my dad was already bringing Gracies and the Machados to Oklahoma to teach seminars, and that was it. So fast forward, um, my dad earned his black belt in 2003. I earned mine in 2004. He was the first one to bring jiu-jitsu to
Oh wow.
Oklahoma, to this area of the country. Because before Carlos even moved here, my dad had brought Hoyler Gracie and Helson Gracie here for seminars. So he was the first one to bring jiu-jitsu to this area of the country. He was Carlos's first student, Carlos's first blue belt. We both got our black belts from Carlos, and we became the first American father and son jiu-jitsu black belts. And that
Oh
was it. We've
wow.
been here in Oklahoma the whole time. He was like my training partner, my teacher, everything. We built it all from the ground up, and then I went on to achieve all those things that you mentioned earlier, and we're still here. Actually, next year will be 30 years since my father started the academy. It was 1993 when he started the academy as a Jeet Kune Do school. So. Um, That's it. I don't know if I went over 10 minutes. That's the martial arts side of the
30.
story, but
No, that was
it's a pretty awesome story.
that was crazy. You know what's so funny is you hit exactly 10 minutes. You're clearly a professional. But what also is funny is that, like, when you talk about your life story, how much you dedicate to the story of your dad. I mean, you basically told me his life story, which is so special to get to know that too. But and also, speaking of like 2003, 2004, I was born in 97, but I started jujitsu in 2003. So while you guys were getting your black belts, I was like taking my first steps onto the mat, which is cool. But in
Yeah,
California, where it was a lot easier to find jujitsu, but even then, in the early 2000s, it was like
yeah.
almost non-existent. So the fact that you guys were black belts in your part of the country is pretty wild for that time period.
Mhm.
It's definitely something that you. I mean, was there even anybody else in that area, like in the years to follow, or really just training with you?
So Carlos he stayed in Dallas till to this day, and so everyone, the highest ranking people, the first American black belts in this area of the country, were all students of Carlos. Um,
Okay.
for sure, and so I mean, Carlos really changed the landscape, changed the direction of my life, my father's, all of us. He had a major impact.
Yeah.
But what's funny is he wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Chuck Norris. And
Yeah.
going back even further, the reason why my dad wasn't became a martial artist and he was inspired to be a martial artist was Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was his
Mm.
hero, and also was a childhood hero of mine because I watched all the Bruce Lee movies with my dad when I was a kid, um, and I had all the Bruce Lee posters and everything. So I I grew up idolizing Bruce Lee. First with my father, then it was Bruce Lee, and I was training Jeet Kune Do my whole life, and then once we discovered Jiu-Jitsu, then it was Chuck Norris that really changed everything for us by bringing Carlos to Dallas. And so Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, um,
Yeah.
these martial arts legend, superhero action star people,
Yeah.
man, they they gave us this life, really. Like they made it possible.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. So it's like Rafael Lovato Sr. and Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee are responsible for Rafael Lovato Jr. And
Yeah.
like, so that was Bruce Lee back in the days, and now it's the UFC, right? So it's like what
Yep.
leads people to jiu-jitsu. It's funny. When you think about, so that's the history that brought you to your black belt. Give us a little bit of an idea of what has happened in your life since then. I know a lot, and I already listed out some of it, but your dad had this academy, and then you started competing, and then what kind of came in from
Mm.
then until now, basically.
So I'm an only child, and
Mm.
when my dad was building the school and everything, like I said, I grew up in the academy first, watching him in Ohio, and then he opened the academy here, and then it was like, okay, instead of going to the school where you were an assistant instructor, now I'm going to the school that is owned by my father, and it's the family business, and
Mm.
similar to what you've grown up in as well. I
Right.
would get out of school, and and I would go straight to the other school, my dad's martial arts school, and I would train when I was younger, like from like 9 to 12, before jiu-jitsu really hit us. I was doing a lot of boxing, and I did some amateur boxing fights, some Golden Gloves matches at that time, and I was always competitive, and that was kind of the easiest thing for me to do competitively. Um, I, I,
Mm.
I mean, I dabbled in other things. I did like stick fighting, Kali
Oh my
tournaments.
gosh,
I
I didn't
did,
even know that.
yeah, I
Wow.
did that, and I did even some like Taekwondo tournaments, just to do something.
Nice.
But I would always get penalized because I'd want to kick the legs or I'd hit the face too hard or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so I was very driven competitively, and so then when jiu-jitsu came along, um, the sport was just beginning. Like the first world championships were in 1996, and this is right around the time that I start learning jiu-jitsu. Now, when we were initially learning jiu-jitsu, it was always more for self-defense purposes. Like my dad, he raised me to be a martial artist. It wasn't a sport thing. It was nothing like, oh, this is a great
Mm.
sport for you to participate in, and that's what we do. This is our sport, right? It was more for the lifestyle
Mm.
and all the values, the way of life. We were a martial arts family, and so when I first started practicing jiu-jitsu, it was like, okay, this is what you have to know to be able to win a fight cleanly and efficiently. It's like very self-defense based. And then as we got deeper into it, then we started to figure out that okay, that there's a world championships in Brazil, and then that this is a sport, and
This is real.
this
We
is
can
real.
actually do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Pan Ams came around, and like I said, my dad did
Mm.
did one of the very first Pan Ams, and then I started to see these other Brazilian kids that were not too much older than me, and then I kind of like had my
Yeah.
competitive sights starting to lock in on jiu-jitsu. So then I transitioned into competing a lot in
Right.
in jiu-jitsu, and and I was there in 2000. The first time I went to Brazil was 1999. I had just turned 16. It was in
Mm.
between my sophomore and junior year of high school, and it was a complete mind-blowing
Mm.
experience. I'm a kid from Oklahoma, going to a third world country, the culture, seeing what
Yeah.
I saw at that age there really like it made me grow up quick,
Grew you
very
up.
quick. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was super inspired, being in the Tijuca Tennis Club and just seeing this
Mm.
raw, pure passion for jiu-jitsu, and people competing for no money, no media, nothing, in basically a pretty trashy place.
Yeah. Just for the
Everyone,
love,
everyone,
right? Yeah.
everyone's shirts off, banging on the drums, doing the chants with the flags of their teams, and
Yeah.
I was just like, whoa, this is something.
Yeah.
And then the
This is
next,
different than what I'm used to in Oklahoma.
yeah, big time, big time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the next year when I went in 2000, BJ Penn won, and I had a really good
Mm.
run. I won 2 medals in the juvenile division that year. I had 8 matches. I fought a lot of guys who ended up becoming like legends.
Oh wow.
From my era. I competed against them when we were just kids, and I did really well. And I watched BJ win, and it was like that was it. I knew exactly what I was doing. I told everyone around me. I said,
Hooked.
I'm going to be the next American to do that. And
Mm.
all I wanted to do was become a black belt world champion, and I wanted to do it in Brazil. Um, and that was it. I set my life goal, and then everything was working towards that. Um, and moving down the line, I became a black belt world champion in 2007, and then in 2009, um, out of nowhere, my dad in his early 50s, he had a heart attack,
Mm.
and that was a real shock, real
Yeah.
shock. Super heavy for me to process. I like it was just life changing. He actually like had his heart attack in our academy. And if it
Oh
wasn't
wow.
for one of our students who was an EMT and recognized the symptoms, he told my dad to immediately go to the hospital. My dad was about to go home and take a nap, and
Oh my gosh.
that would have been the
Whew.
end of it. And so he told my dad to go to the hospital, and sure enough, right when they got there, um, it went full on, and my dad's heart actually stopped. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
we almost lost him that day, um, and it really changed the course of everything because at that point in time, I was just teaching and helping out with the academy, but I was a
Mm-hmm.
competitor. I was 25 years old. All I wanted to do was win world titles and make history, make my mark. And then when that happened, um, he was out for like 6 months, recovering. He had surgery, everything. Like, he was at home, couldn't do anything, and he was a one-man show. He answered the phones, he taught the classes,
Yeah.
minus the ones that I taught. Uh, he signed people up, like he cleaned the school. He did everything on his own. He was a super old school, like proud
Old school
Latino.
style for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
proud Latino man,
Yeah.
built it from nothing, and that's what he did. He showed up every day and he worked all day every day, and that's a big reason why
Yeah.
he had the heart attack. Um, and he was just carrying all that for so many years, and so it was time for me to step up. And so I ran the school for the rest of that year as he was recovering, and then going into 2010, my mom and we kind of set my dad down and was just like, hey, let's work out a way, let's figure this out to where you can start to ease out and I can,
Yeah.
take the responsibility off his shoulders. And so basically I ended up kind of like buying the academy from him and
Mm-hmm.
kind of setting him up towards retirement. And um, and I took over the
So you're
school. So
mid-20s?
I was it's
You're
going,
25?
yeah, I was 25, 26 going into 2010, and I became the
Yeah.
business owner, 26 years old. Um, and then it
Wow.
was
It's
like,
pretty
okay,
young to take on a monster like that. Yeah, that's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. And from there, I just wanted to bring things to the level that I felt like they deserved to be, according to what we had achieved, and the history that we had made, and we had this world-class jiu-jitsu school. Remember, I'm already world champion. Like I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of great things competitively, but our school did not
Mm-hmm.
represent that. We didn't have that many students. My dad, you know, like he couldn't just ride off into the sunset. You know what I mean? If I didn't do martial arts,
Yeah, yeah.
if I wasn't involved when his health took a hit, if I was like something else, like a lawyer or whatever, accountant,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
we would have lost the school. We would have lost it, and everything would have been for nothing. But because I was
Yeah.
involved, I was able to step up and take it over. And then it was just like, okay, I got to take care of my family, and I want to build this up, and also make sure, I take care of myself too. I didn't want the same thing to happen to me,
Yeah.
and
Well, and
and
it's heavy too because you were involved, but I think sometimes when people think about an athlete, a high level athlete working in a school, they don't really see the athlete part as being a full time job. So you were involved, but you did have a job, you know. So like going in and taking over that school, I mean, that's a lot to do at the
yeah,
same time,
yeah,
especially in your
and
prime.
the back end, like everyone can
Yeah.
kind of sit and say, oh, this many students, they pay this much, pay the bills, it's easy, like it's not that
Mm-hmm.
hard. But once the lease is in your name
Yep.
and you're responsible for everything and you see the amount of stuff on the other side, it's a lot. And you
Yeah.
know, for sure, it was a big like undertaking for me, but I was very motivated, and it took me 10 years. It took me 10 years from 2010 to
Wow.
2020 to get everything level up, reinvest over and over and over, build a staff. I expanded the school that we had before. I
Mm.
bought the unit next door, so I had multiple mads. We had no staff. I built a staff. We did zero marketing. We barely even had a website.
Wow.
We were small, and
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 if you
getting
guys
everything
just,
up.
I want to add in, if you guys ever go to Oklahoma, this is not just like Oh, we expanded a little bit. You guys have to go see this school. It is gigantic. Like I feel like I was gonna get lost in there. It's huge. And it's like pristine, it's clean, it's beautiful. Like what you have done with that school is it doesn't just look like a martial, it's not even what you would what most people would think of as a martial arts academy. It looks like a sports institute. Like it looks like a performance institute that someone would walk into. It's incredible. So yeah, definitely for I don't know what it looked like before, but whatever you've done in the last 10 years, it makes sense to me why it has taken you a decade to build the castle you have because it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard, and you hit all the growing pains, and you learn some tough lessons along the way.
Yeah.
It was very hard. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But I have my dream academy now, and that's kind of how that part of my life came to be.
Amazing. And we're gonna get into some more of your competitive and your family stuff. So I will let you off the hook of your life story for now because we are gonna get into that. But just man, what an incredible that was like that would be like a 35 almost like a 35 year story there, 36 maybe you said 10 years since you're 25 or 26. So because of your multifaceted, you have like a lot of aspects to your life. It's a very entrepreneurial lifestyle in every sense of the word. We use life and career interchangeably a lot because so much of it is just so interrelated. You can't really separate it out, right? I mean, you can in some ways, but it's difficult. So when we think about, we're going to go over like the biggest highlight and then one of the darkest moments. So when you think about your biggest highlight of your life that you're most excited to tell your kids your story of, because we have two young babies, we'll talk about them more lately, but you're a new dad. So when you think about the stories that you want to tell them, what is a big highlight that comes to mind for you?
Um, well, they are my big highlight, you know,
Yeah.
for sure. But if I was gonna be talking to them, um, I would I would probably say winning the Bellator title was extra special just because of everything that I was going through, and like I was just a big underdog, and like it was like a rocky kind of moment and story. Um, but um,
Yeah.
but I kind of feel like my whole life was a little bit like that. Like, I mean, there was never a time where you would think
Yeah.
like a kid from Oklahoma would win world titles in jiu-jitsu, while still living in Oklahoma. And
Right,
I
right.
never won the worlds whenever I was at a lower belt, blue, purple, brown. I always
Mm.
I medaled, but I didn't win. And so just I think the highlight for me is just how it all works together. The never give up attitude and spirit. Always staying positive, understanding that. One of my favorite quotes: "Victory is always possible for the person who refuses to stop fighting." I mean, that's how you become a black belt in
Mm.
jiu-jitsu. You keep showing up. You you take your losses or your temporary failures, and you keep going. And that's basically what I've always did. And for whatever reason, MMA really kind of brought out the best in me, and was sort of my best. Uh, I don't know how do you say, like body of work, or portfolio. Everything that I
Right,
learned
right.
as a martial artist. Because there's more to me than just jujitsu. Like everyone kind of thinks I'm just a jujitsu guy, but as I told you, I grew up in martial arts. I was a martial artist
Yeah.
before we learned jujitsu, and so I had that whole piece of my life plus jujitsu, um, and everything that jujitsu taught me as well, like how to be the
Right.
best student, and how to get out of your comfort zone. Going to Brazil, barely 16 years old, without my parents. By the way, remember my dad doesn't fly. Every time I went to Brazil, I was
That's
by
right.
myself,
Yeah. Alone.
and yeah, and walking into training rooms and just being like afraid, and nervous, um, that kind of stuff. Like it set me up for MMA. I didn't have my first fight until I was 31 years old,
Mm.
and I think all the lessons and everything that I had lived and gone through up to that point, really set me up for success in MMA, and I managed to be undefeated and win a world title,
Wow.
without being beaten, and I did that in the span of 5 years. Um, from my first fight to the world title fight. And so I think that's like my best body of work, but specifically the Bellator title fight, just because of what was going on behind the scenes. People had no idea what I was going through. I didn't know I
Yeah.
was even going to get to fight until 2 weeks before the fight. Um, and so it was really,
Wow.
really, really hard, and just trying to process this brain condition and everything that I just found out about, and all that was it was a very trying time. And I had all these doctors telling me not to fight, and any one of them, I could have easily had just been
Mm,
like, ah, yeah, I'm done. I give up. That's it. Um, but I didn't give up,
right.
and then that set me up for success in that fight, because it came down to the fifth round, and I knew exactly what I was there for and how much it meant for me. I already had to dig deep just to be there. So when it came time, to dig deep in the fifth round, is like, I'm already here. You're gonna like, I don't want to
Yeah.
say it like
Right.
this,
Right.
because I don't want to downplay the ones that really do put their lives on the line. But
Right.
without having a better way to say it, like, I was ready. I mean, I was ready to die in there. I was ready to give everything. You're literally
Yeah.
gonna have to shut me completely off before
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna stop fighting. And so I think that was like one of my greatest displays of heart, and just really who I
Mm,
am, and who my dad taught me to be, and who I am as a martial artist. Just everything that I've been through set me up for that moment. And I ended up having my most dominant round in the fifth round.
mm,
And that was the first fifth round of my life against a guy who's been fighting championship fights for years, and had only lost a handful of times.
wow.
Like, he had like over 50 fights, and that was my 10th fight. So
Wow.
um, if there's something that I would want my kids to see, as like anything is possible, and give your heart and trust and believe and love, surround yourself with love, the right people, know what you're fighting for, all that kind of stuff. Like,
Mm,
that would be my best example for them.
wow. Yeah. Incredible. I got goosebumps when you said, like, you're going to have to completely shut me off to get me out of this fight, pretty much, right? It's like that feeling of being ready to die is, I think, what we see in a lot of the greatest of all times in a lot of different arenas. But in combat sports and MMA, it's quite unique, right? Because you are literally, you're fighting another person with no weapons other than your body, right? It's pretty, there's that famous
Yeah.
clip of, um, you know what I'm talking about? Where he's like, you're gonna have, like, I'm ready to die. You're gonna have to kill me, right? And that's how it must have felt when you. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was gonna ask what your darkest moment of your life was. That is a very deep question. I mean, I know you've shared a lot with us already. You have the story of your father, with his health, with his heart attack, and then when a lot of people, including myself, when asked this question or when thinking about you in regards to this question, I would think of the brain condition, and then, going into, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Or can I fight? Or what do things look like for me? Is that when you felt at your darkest, or was it something else?
No, I wouldn't call that like the darkest moment. It was a very tough moment. It was hard. But in a lot of ways, I felt so much love. I had my MMA coach Mauricio with me.
Mm,
Shanji was with me, and my wife, who was then just my girlfriend at the time, she was with me. Like, they were
mm,
giving me so much love. And I was crying a lot. I was like crying every day and during that
yeah,
camp, because it
yeah.
seemed like everything was going wrong, and I didn't know. I couldn't focus on my training. I wasn't sleeping. I was so unsure of everything. So it was a hard time, but I had tremendous support and love, um, coming to me. And no matter what, I knew I was going to get through it. Like, and I never stopped, like, believing and trusting, that something good would be at the end.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call it my darkest. Um,
Mm,
if I was to be very honest, I think the darkest period in my life, um, was when I was going through a divorce from my first
Mm.
marriage. That was that was yeah, that was more of, it was a hard time, but it also felt a little dark. I felt very alone, and it was just
Yeah.
it's hard. We were married for 7 years, and
Wow.
that's just a hard time, and that happened while I was in the middle of my MMA career. I was actually uh, getting ready for my third Bellator fight. We were
Wow.
separated. I was living with a friend and kind of living out of my car, um, and not having a home, so to speak, and just crying a lot once
In a
again.
lot of ways,
You know,
right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then that
Yeah.
fight was like December 3rd, I think was the day of the fight, or December 1st, something like that. It was a week after Thanksgiving, and so I'm
Wow.
going through this very hard time, and just kind of replaying so many years in my head over and over.
Mm.
Where did things go wrong? And
Yeah.
and it was just not healthy at the end. And then I'm trying to stay focused on the camp. And sure enough, my last sparring before the fight. So I usually do my last sparring on Thursday,
Hmm.
and the fight is the next Saturday, right?
Mm.
So I give myself like 9, 10 days. Literally, the last sparring, the last round
Oh my gosh, of
of the
course.
sparring. Yeah, always like that.
Always.
I ended up breaking my nose.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
the person I was sparring with, I had a takedown. I was transitioning to his back, and he was spinning to face me, and his elbow just chipped right here on the bridge of my nose.
Oof.
Boop, and I could feel it go out. I felt, the click, the sound.
Had you
You
broken your
know,
nose before? Or that was the first one?
never, never.
Oh,
That was the first and only time.
nice.
Um,
Knock on
and
wood.
and it was funny. Yeah, knock on wood for that. Where's boom?
I
I got it. There we
know.
go. um, and it was so funny because I I go to the mirror and I see my nose all crooked,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm just like, I'm saying every cuss word. I'm just, and remember, I'm already going through so much, and then
Right.
boom, this happens. And I look at my coach and I'm like, man, my nose is broken. And he tries to be so positive. He looks, no, no, you're okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's not broke. You're fine. You're fine. Just trying to be positive.
Yeah.
And like next day I go to the doctor, and doctor's like, yes, it's broken. And I was just laughing at my coach. But that was that was scary because I was getting ready to fight like a multiple time All-American wrestler, D1 All-American wrestler,
Right.
and on paper, I wasn't supposed to be able to take him down, and it was going to be more of a stand-up fight. And he had heavy hands, he had
Mm.
knockouts, and so it was like this was a fight where if I might be exchanging more than I've ever exchanged,
Right.
and if I got hit one time on my nose, it would immediately start bleeding. Affect. I mean, it would just totally affect the fight. Um, and so I was very stressed. I couldn't believe it. And it was Thanksgiving Day, and I was just
Oh my
like,
gosh.
oh, why? Everything's going wrong. My life, this camp, this fight.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I went out there, and he never hit me one time. Never hit me one time in
Wow.
my
Not
face.
one time.
Um,
Oh my gosh.
Not one
That's
time. And it went
crazy.
it
Did you
went to
feel like you
decision.
were Oh, wow.
Yeah, we fought all 3 rounds. He was shorter than me, but I won all the stand up, and he ended up pinning me against the cage a lot because he wanted to take me down, but he couldn't. And he was also a little scared of
Mm.
going to the ground with me. So he was kind of pinning me
Yeah,
against
I
the
don't blame
cage and kind of like,
him.
like he was kind of stalling the fight a little bit. And then I took him down in the last round, but he got right back
Yeah.
up. But it was mainly a stand up fight, but I bloodied him up a little bit, and I didn't get hit one time, and I won the decision, unanimous
Nice.
decision.
Wow. So, what's
Yeah.
interesting is I mean, I guess it's not that much of a surprise. But it is interesting how consistently you hear from people who have achieved such great things in their lives, and some of their biggest achievements have come from like the darkest nights, so to speak. And you gotta wonder like why this is such a consistent story. Do you have a theory about that? I think I've heard you speak about this a little bit before, or why some of the darkest times lead to some of the light. Or you have so many examples. That's one big example. Also, winning the title is a big example. I mean, what is your philosophy on that? Because I have my own stories about that. I've heard that from so many athletes, and also just in business and in other areas of expertise too. What do you think about that concept?
Well, there's a lot of quotes about this. One of my favorites is like, very similar to what you just said, like your greatest achievements are one step after your greatest failures.
Right.
And so, anytime everything seems to be falling apart and you're tested and maybe you want to quit, or give up, that's an opportunity to grow closer and remember your why. What is your purpose?
Mm,
Like grow closer to your purpose. Like, because you have to dig deep. It's like time to understand, or remind yourself, what you're doing it for, to allow you to push further and keep going and keep trusting, not lose your faith, and keep believing. And so you need that, like you really do. If everything is easy all the time, when the breaking point comes, you might not know how to deal with it.
right.
You might not be able to handle a loss, or a temporary failure, because you got too used to winning all the time. So,
Mm,
like going back to what I was saying before about how MMA kind of became my best body of work, I think it was because of all the losses and butt kickings and just hard moments where I cried and just, I never
yeah.
won the worlds. I felt like I showed up. I failed every year. Basically, is how I felt. I had a goal
Yeah.
of being a world champion at every belt, and I didn't do it.
Right.
Um, and so I had already like been through that,
Yeah.
and and I had seen the other side. I seen what happens when you don't give up, and everything worked out. I mean, like in 2007 when I won the worlds, I also became the first person to Grand Slam.
Wow.
Like the first person, not just American,
Ever.
Brazilian. It
Wow. I
wasn't
didn't know
even
that. That's
it wasn't
incredible.
it wasn't even called the Grand Slam yet. It didn't have a name. I didn't promote it.
Mm.
I didn't even know, like, okay, I just went to every tournament and I happened to win.
Yeah.
But it wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. And then when that happened, I was like, man, if I had won so many other times, like earlier coming up, I wouldn't have had the same fire, the same drive to do what I did that year.
Mm.
And
Right.
and so just too many times in my life had I already experienced like, you know, the really tough moment. I mean, you're going through it now, with your injury. Like
Yeah.
I had this guy, this surgery here
Oof.
right after my first MMA fight. I got
Yeah.
hurt. Um,
Oh, so you're starting
and
your MMA career, starting a brand new career, and you have a
yeah,
major
in
injury.
my 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, in my 30s already. Major injury. I'm out 6 months. It took me 9 months to get back to competition. Um, and that
Mm.
was a moment where I was like, is it gonna happen? Am I gonna be able to come back and be the same? All that kind of stuff. And in that time when the pause button was
Yeah.
on, I got to reflect. I got to have more gratitude, and I got to dive deeper into my purpose and understand it more. And the setback leads to a great comeback. And coming back, I set my sights on becoming an MMA world champion. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have had the same drive and focus and um, like mental fortitude to go through everything that I was about to go through, with MMA and the rest of my life as well, my personal life, and all that. But
Yeah.
you know, like we've all survived our worst days, and we're still here. So I going back to the gratitude and everything that I said, like having a grip on your life,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember, like when everything seems to be going wrong, it's probably for the best. You know, there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to grow, to learn, and come back stronger, smarter, more inspired, more motivated, and just remember that, something great is at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I mean, it's so fascinating hearing about how many dark nights or I mean, when you're living it, you don't always know what you're going to think about it when you look back later or what are going to be the darkest. But the struggles. I mean, going after your first MMA fight, having this major injury, you're in your 30s, you just had this incredible jiu-jitsu career, and obviously, I mean, you've continued fighting in jiu-jitsu since then. So it's not that that was over by any means, and then that giving you the experience to go into the next struggles that you had with the divorce and fighting again, and then the brain, like everything with your brain. I mean, it's how can you imagine? I mean, it's hard to imagine being able to conquer one when you haven't had all the previous like warm ups, so to speak, right? It's like just
Yeah.
continuing to get back on the bike. So it's really fat. It's really incredible. Um,
And you're grateful for all of it. Grateful, grateful for
yeah,
all of it. You know, you're gonna look back and you're gonna be
yeah,
grateful for what you're going through with your injury because it's gonna lead you to the next thing. Look at what you're doing right now. There's not
right.
one of those dark or tough times, surgery, divorce, anything. Yeah, maybe like I learned mistakes, right? But I'm grateful that I made those mistakes so I could get the lessons and take me to the next place. You're grateful for all of it because it all makes you who you are and it leads to the next thing. So, like
Yeah.
anyone that's in any super tough moment, I just say, hey, look, you're gonna look back on this and you're gonna be grateful that this is happening right now. So don't worry, stay positive. What did I was watching something the other day and it says the person said, um, at the end, everything is going to be okay. And if it's not okay, it's
So
not the
good.
end.
Yeah, I love that quote. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's really I love exactly what you're saying because I think I'm 25. I just turned 25, so I'm very young. But I have had, I mean, with an extreme lifestyle comes extremes ups and downs, right? And I think through all the lows, your processing speed of getting into the mindset of like this is going to be the best thing for me gets a little bit faster. At least that's been my
Hmm.
experience. The first few big ones are like my world is ending. Like how is this happening?
Yeah.
And then as you can look back with 2020 vision, like okay, I can see how this led to that and this gave me
Hmm.
this. And then now as tragedies or big life events come up that feel really painful, you can see it a little bit sooner. At least that's how, like, I feel like over
Hmm.
the years my prescription gets a little bit better, right? It gets more
Right.
accurate.
Right.
And you'll be in that moment. And luckily, it sounds like you have amazing people around you supporting you. I've been so lucky to have that as well, that always bring me back to love and gratitude. And having people when
Hmm.
you're in some of these most painful moments be like, I promise this is going to be good. You're going to look back and this is going to be the best thing that ever happened. And you might be like having the worst time with it. And for me, there have been moments where I'm like crying and I'm like, I know, but I just don't see it yet. But like, I believe you. I don't really believe you, but I'm choosing to believe you. And
Right.
eventually I'll see it. So for me, that's definitely been the process.
Yeah. And I think that's what jujitsu teaches us as well. It gives us that ability, um, you know, staying positive in bad situations, bad positions, getting
Yeah.
comfortable with the uncomfortable, always continuing to show up. Like it only grows um, your your ability to process and keep I think the appreciation, the gratitude, and everything as well. Um, like I love jujitsu even more today than what I did last year, 5 years ago,
Yeah.
10 years ago. I've grown and learned so much more as a black belt than what I have coming up in the lower belts. I mean, all those sort of things, and and then just the life lessons that you can take from the mats and apply, into your life.
Mm.
Um, like that's why I think the martial arts education is just so beautiful. There's nothing like it, and I think it's the best for everybody, for kids, for adults, young, old, doesn't matter where you're at in life. The martial arts education is just so powerful and will have such a major impact on your life and put you around those people who think like that, who are there to better themselves and help you and lift you up, put you around the right people to help you get through anything that you're going through.
Absolutely. And it's so much, I found that it's so much easier to find those people on the mats than it is for me to find them off. It's not that they don't exist,
Yeah,
but for me, it's been so valuable to put those people around me and to find them in martial arts academies. Um, so I want to.
100%.
We don't have I have so many questions that I want to ask you because you have so much brilliant experience. Um, but we're gonna go through a couple, and anything that you want to go short on. Anything you want to expand on, you let me know and you expand on. Okay. So the
Okay.
first thing I want to ask you is, tell me a little bit about what it's like to have a dad as an instructor, a mentor, but also a dad. Because I have the same experience, but I think yours was a little bit more intensive. Whereas, like, I had other instructors growing up, I left to wrestling, I had wrestling coaches. What kind of role, I mean, what has that done for your guys' relationship along the way?
Um, it's been hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I definitely felt a lot of pressure
Yeah.
growing up. Um, my dad, he never knew his father.
Mm,
His father passed when he was just a baby, um, and he's basically been on his own since he was 15 years old. Um, he he's like he's a very, I mean, his story is incredible. Um, he's kind of a man's man, I guess you could say. Done everything the hard way.
yeah.
Um, you know, has a very specific approach and attitude, and it's like I said, the hard way.
Yeah.
Um, and so he made me tough. He made me very, very tough. And
Mm,
he taught me how to work hard, and he led by example. There was
mm.
anything he said, I never questioned because he was
He was
the
doing it.
living example. He was doing it,
Right.
and his words were always very, very powerful to me. So he only had to tell me once anything at all.
Yeah.
Um, but it was hard. I can't you know like my memories from childhood being with my dad were are all basically training memories.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part. It's like there wasn't a lot of um, just dad and son. It was more coach or teacher with student.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, not a lot of
uh,
separation between church and state there.
yeah, yeah. And being an only child, it felt like it was all on me a little bit. So,
Right,
um,
right.
we have a beautiful relationship. Like it became better as I got older.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there are definitely, some tough times. But like I said, he was. I mean, he set me up. He set me up. He showed me
Yeah.
the way. He wasn't scared to live his passion. I mean, on multiple levels, right? Being an organist and then a martial artist, like you don't really meet too many people like that. He still plays the organ. He still practices. He still trains.
Yeah.
Like he was the type that said, "I'm gonna do what I love and give everything to it," and that's a life that I want to live. And the sacrifice and the hard work and everything behind it, he was ready for.
Right.
And so he showed me that way. And I was in college. Um, I went to college, because martial arts didn't show that it was going to pay the bills back in those days. Like
Right.
we went through a lot of hardships, a lot of hardships. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, jujitsu, it's gonna set me up. I'm gonna, make this money or whatever. Like that that wasn't around back in the early 2000s. 20 years ago. And so I went to college, and when it came time for me to make a decision, I had an opportunity. I competed against Solo. Yeah, that's how I met them.
Oh
I
my
fought
gosh.
Solo.
That's crazy. I did not know how that's how
Yeah,
you guys met.
yeah, I fought Solo. I was a 19-year-old brown belt, and I competed against him in the finals of the Arnold Gracie World Championships, which was like the biggest tournament after ADCC. They paid
Mm,
$5,000 for the champion and 1,500 for second place, and so it was big money. All the ADCC champions would go and compete there,
mm.
and there was only three divisions: a light, middle, and a heavy. And I fought Solo in the finals of the middle, and I actually submitted one of his black belts in the semifinals. It was the first
Oh my
black belt
gosh.
that I ever submitted um, in competition,
Hmm.
and then I competed against Solo right after that. Um, but I did pretty well. I held my own, and
Yeah.
he gave me an invitation to train with him. Um, well, we stayed in touch. We brought him for a seminar, and then he gave me an invitation to train with him and go to Brazil and train with Shanji and everything. And so when it came time for me to have this conversation with my dad, and I'm like, look, this opportunity is here. I don't I'm hating school. Like if I was going to say another
Mm.
dark time in my life, it was when I was going to college. I hated
Wow.
college. I
Yeah.
knew that I didn't want that. I didn't want
Right.
anything to do with it. But I felt like I had to, and blah 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 blah. And I was depressed. I was having a hard time, you know, still doing jiu-jitsu while going to school full time. And anyways, when it came time for me to have that conversation with him and say, "Hey, I'm done with school. I got to do this," he got
Yeah.
it. He understood. He
Oh,
understood.
nice.
Like
Wow.
it wasn't an easy conversation by any
Yeah.
means, but at the end of it, it was like, all right, well, you know, give it your all. You better freaking
Yeah.
work
Well,
your ass
well,
off
going
and
back to
make it happen.
his experience opening a school. I mean, he of course, I mean, he gave everything, like you said, to open that academy. So I think it sounds like he trusted that he had instilled that in you. So if you were going to follow something, you were going to do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for sure. I'd already proven myself, so to speak, with just
Mm-hmm.
my discipline and what I was doing up to that point. But yeah, so there's so many things
Yeah.
that that I learned from him that made me who I am today. Of course, um, but it was definitely like one where it's like, okay, the relationship begins later in life, right? The kind of like here
Mm.
it's more serious, and it kept me out of
Yeah.
trouble. That's for sure. I didn't mess around with my dad.
Yeah. What does that make you think of when you think about your kids? Because you have so now kid talk. This is my this is the most fun topic of the podcast for sure today. So you have two twins, well, one pair of twins, two babies. They are brand new babies. Tell me about when you think about. I mean, you have your academy. Your life in a lot of ways revolved around martial arts. What are your thoughts on raising them around the academy? You know, obviously you had one experience with your dad. I mean, what are you thinking as far as like putting your kids on the mat or like what if they want to do other stuff? What do you think about? What do you guys talk about?
Oh, I've talked a lot, and I've talked to a lot of different people. A lot of it is just me not necessarily looking for the perfect advice, but just putting my thoughts and feelings out there, and because I don't think there is a perfect way, right? Everyone's different. Every
Yeah.
child is different. Um, there is no like, oh, do this and it'll all work out. Um, and
Yeah.
it definitely makes you look back on your childhood a lot. I've been doing
Yeah.
doing that a lot as well, and kind of trying to process what's going on there, and at that time versus today, and who I'm going to be, and um,
Mm.
the positive things, the negative things, all of it. I going back to what I said before, the martial arts education is unlike any other. So for me, passing on the martial arts education is definitely not a question. I
Mm,
want that for my children because that's what made me who I am today, and that's what's helped me, have a positive impact on so many people, and I've seen the effects that it's had on, thousands and thousands of people, and no doubt that is going to help them in their lives, whether it's self-defense, just discipline, health, moving your body, taking care of yourself, gaining confidence, and all that stuff that is just invaluable. I want that for them. So, being in the kids' classes and doing their 2, 3 times a week, 1 hour at a time, like
hmm.
that's going to be like going to school. Like you got to go to school, you got to receive your martial
Yeah.
arts education as well, and after that,
Mm. Oh, I love that. Martial arts. Yeah, you receive it's like going to school, receiving your martial arts education. And it's just so for everyone listening to clarify, it's not to say that they're gonna go be Jiu-Jitsu World Champions. Like that's a whole different conversation. But the martial arts education and you have different instructors, it's not only you on the mat, like all and you have also the luxury of having life outside of your academy in a way that maybe because of what your dad was building, you
mhm,
didn't at the time,
yeah,
right? So there's a lot of
yeah,
differences there, I think.
yeah, for sure. And I'm much older and like I'm further in life than what my parents were when
Mm.
they had me. I'm 39, having my first kids. They were in their early 20s, so it's just a
Yeah.
different time. Like I'm more like established, situated with my career and lifestyle and everything. So
Yeah.
I'm happy I waited this long, for sure. But uh,
Mm.
receiving the martial arts education, and then from there, hey, let's figure out, what they want to go for. But
Right.
whatever it is, I want them to see me as an example of what can happen when you give your life to something and live your passion. Um,
Right.
whether it's something through like education, if they really want to pursue a professional career, um, and kind of pave their way or do their own in like entrepreneurial business, whatever, something on that side of things versus something athletic. But no matter what, uh, I think the martial arts education is also a, a way to say, hey, look, we only have one body as well, and it's super important that we take care of our
Mm-hmm.
bodies. So we have to move, breathe, stretch, work to be stronger, and understand that what our bodies are capable of, and that's a big part of my life. Every day, without a question, something must be done for my body. Um, you know,
Mm.
as because of what I do professionally, but regardless, like, right, our minds, our energy, our emotions, we can have a better control, and so I want them to
Mm.
just learn how to take care of their bodies, and be healthy. And with that, if they want to pursue
Right.
something on the athletic side, let's do it. Let's go. I can't wait. I can't wait to be in
Yeah.
the gym with them. and and then of course
Mm-hmm.
train our minds, train our spirit. And the other thing about being
Mm.
in the school, in the academy, or wherever we are, when we're on the mats, they're going to be surrounded by love. They're going to be surrounded by good people that care for
Yeah.
them, and I think that also is something that I want them to experience. Like, hey, look at all these amazing people around that we have to support that are ready to, help in any way. They're going to just
Yeah.
meet so many incredible people from all walks of life. It's going to be a big deal for their education, understanding culture. We're going to travel a lot for sure. So I don't know, but at the end of the day, like I don't know anything. I'm only a few months in. The hard stuff hasn't. I mean, I say the hard stuff hasn't
Yeah.
started. The hard stuff has definitely started, but it's going to be
Oh, I
always
bet.
changing. Always changing, and I know I'm going to make mistakes, but all I can do is just try to be present, learn, listen, and keep mama happy too. That's all that's all I can do.
Oh yeah. An angel. She is such an angel. And it's funny because that actually brings us to one of our last questions when I'm thinking about. So, you have had a recent, very public retirement. We know that. Oh, I just almost knocked my microphone over. A recent, very public retirement. You had such an incredible year. You and Chandru put on such a show for all of your fans. It was such a blessing to watch it myself. So, when you've watched people retiring before you, you have had this long career. When you think about the next 15 years of your life, obviously, you have a big family life ahead of you for the next 15 years. You got the kids, you got your wife, you have your academy. What excites you about the next 15 years? You had this, not that the grind stops, but it's a different kind of grind. You've been grinding, you've been doing all this stuff behind the scenes with a combat athlete's life that nobody sees. Just to name a few things, if people aren't super familiar with you, nonstop seminar tours. That alone is something that people don't see very often with athletes continuing to teach seminars all the time. You're always traveling, you're always on the go. Even when I visited you to teach at your academy, you were working the whole time I was there. You pick me up from the airport, we go to Starbucks, we're both working there for an hour before we go to the school. You're constantly working towards new goals on and off the mat. So now that, and you're still training. So now that you're technically professionally retired,
Well,
you're training, you're not
retired.
done training, I know, because yeah, exactly, right? And I know you just explained how important it is to continue to move your body all the time. We all know that you're not, if you know anything about Rafael Lovato, you know he's not done training. So we know you're going to be training. When you look at the next 15 years of your life, what do you see as, number one, exciting, but number two, you've already had such an amazing legacy and you're still in the first half of your life. What does the legacy of Rafael Lovato, I know it's a big question, look like, or what excites you about continuing that journey in different ways?
Wow. So in a way, it's easy. Like now, 100%, most important thing is just being the best father I can be. Like that's easy. No, nothing else matters. My babies look at me. Nothing that I've achieved matters anymore. Like they're not looking at me. Oh, black belt this or whatever, won this. Like it doesn't matter. I'm just dad, and it's like I'm a white belt, right? I'm zero, and now I'm excited to learn and grow as a father, and just do the best that I can, and hopefully pass on as much as I can to help them be successful and live the best life possible. So that's number one. Retirement. You guys know how it is. I retired from adult level competition, more or less, like
Right.
tournaments, competing against these 20-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
20 somethings, multiple times throughout a weekend is hard. It's hard at 39, almost 40
Right.
years old. So I'm open for super fight opportunities. There's even things in the works and thoughts and ideas for next year and stuff like that
Exciting.
that will keep me out there. One match, all right, that's a little easier to manage versus some of these young kids,
Yeah.
than multiple matches over two
Right.
days. But I'm gonna compete forever, and that's important to me too because I think
Mm-hmm.
as parents you have to also keep being you. You know what I mean? And as long as you keep being you, you can be the best example. And so of course I'm gonna do my best to be as present as possible with them and make time for them. And I have to adjust some business things. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
as they grow older, I want to be the dad that's there at their practices or whatever it is they're doing. Music
Mm-hmm.
lesson, whatever it is. I don't want to miss that. Um,
Yeah.
but I also want them to see what dad does. You know what I mean? Beyond just teaching and training,
Mm-hmm.
that their dad isn't scared of challenging himself and putting it on the line. And so I'm going to be
Yeah.
doing the master stuff forever, forever. I will be
Yeah, I
competing
love it.
in the master division stuff because that's who I am. I love the
Hmm.
challenge. I love being on a mission. I love the preparation. I love competing with all my guys, and
Yeah.
all of it. And I want my kids to see their dad out there scrapping, and doing his thing. Um, and so hopefully that will motivate them to.
We want it too. The fans want it too. So keep going.
And like I said,
It's
hope.
so it's so
Go
no,
ahead.
go for it.
Hopefully that will keep them like with that like okay, we got to take risks. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
put it on the line, go for it, and help them. But and it'll be fun because then we can have the family vacation afterwards, right? Get to travel the
Yeah.
world, and the seminars that I do are really just with my affiliate schools. These days, I have over 30 affiliate
Mm,
schools, so that's definitely moving forward as competitions become few and farther between. Spending more time on expanding my association. I have a lot of brands that have been in the works, projects, ideas, and things that I've kind of just pushed off to the side because I'm on the competition grind for so long. And I mean, I have
hmm.
this book that's so close to being done. It just needs like maybe 2 to 4 weeks of dedicated, all in time
Wow.
to get completed. And so, there's just all these other things. I want to expand on my
Mm,
entrepreneurial experiences and maybe get into some different businesses and stuff
yeah.
like that. And I have the best motivation now. I want to make a little empire for my family and take care of the kids
Yes.
and pass that
Well,
on.
you've
And
already made a little one. Now you can make a giant one. You definitely have an empire already. Just have to say that for
yeah,
sure.
working on it. But
Yeah.
there's so much. So um, definitely want to expand schools worldwide, keep pumping some good, positive, timeless jujitsu stuff out there, and I've thought about the book, maybe podcasts, public speaking, stuff like that. I,
Yeah.
I, I would love to just continue kind of putting together what it is I have to say. From my experiences and putting that out there to hopefully inspire everybody in all walks of life.
Beautiful. Well, you've definitely done that with one person and me. Actually, I feel like I could speak for Sula. She's nodding. I feel like you've definitely done that for us today and for everybody listening and for so many people all over the world. I wanted to add, so this is so funny that you mentioned you competing in front of your kids because I think that when I started training when I was 5, my dad was in his like mid 30s, and that's really when jiu-jitsu picked up for us. I grew up watching him compete my entire
Hmm.
life, and he didn't even compete in the adult division. I think I'm sorry to the masters division. I think until maybe like 41 or 42. I could be wrong
Wow.
about that, but he won the world at all the color belts as an older guy in the divisions. And for me,
Wow.
like there's so many memories I have of like yeah, and also Americans doing that in the mid 2000s were really uncommon too, as you know,
Hmm.
because you were doing it at the highest
Yeah.
levels. So for me, watching that as just a bit of a reflection from the kids' point of view was absolutely one of the most is really one of the most like treasured and precious memories I have is watching my dad compete and knowing what was going on because I was competing the next weekend or the same weekend or just feeling really motivated and excited about that because we have a connection as far as like a coach and a athlete, of course, so like, just the same as
Right.
you and your dad, but being able to watch my dad compete or compete side by side is something that you just can't replace. So I'm so excited to
Yeah.
watch that like develop for you and your family. It's going to be so amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Hopefully it does the same thing to them too.
It's going to be good. And even if they're doing something outside of jiu-jitsu, just like what you said, it's, watching you overcome challenges and face things that look scary or feel scary, especially in combat sports where it's it's physical. It's not like I'm going to
Mhm.
go take a hard test. Like this is pretty in your face as it gets. So it's, whatever they end up doing, it's going to be inspiring. And not only the career you've already had looking back on that and being able to study you and watch things of you and maybe listen to this one day, like hear all those things, it's going to be incredible. But to actually see you do it in the flesh is going to be so cool. So I'm so excited and I'm
Thank
so
you.
grateful that you were able to be on today. Man, I learned so much, and it was so lovely getting to know you more. Last question. So, after deep diving into so much of your life, um, past and present, what is your answer to what does it mean to have a grip on your life? Is it the same or has it changed at all? Or do you want to expand it all?
No, I think it's pretty much the same. Being present, being in the moment, giving your best. I think if
Mm,
you're present and you're grateful for whatever it is you're doing, you're automatically going to give your best. Whether it's a hard training, teaching a class, or just having a conversation with a significant other,
mm.
changing a diaper, feeding my babies. I have a whole
Yeah.
new, I have a whole new perspective because before a win was, you know, completing a hard workout, the
Mm,
way that I felt, um, chipping away at a goal, um, seeing my numbers get better or
yeah.
my performance in training or in a competition, whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
now I can't even begin to describe how amazing of a win it is to change my baby's diapers, get them in clean clothes, feed them
Yeah.
just right to where they don't throw up, and put them to sleep gently and easy to where they go right asleep and they stay asleep. With two, it's extra tricky and it's definitely a team job. My wife, she's
Yeah.
incredible, incredible. I mean, obviously I'm
Mm.
biased, but for me, she's just the best mom ever already, and she puts up with me working so hard doing what I'm doing.
Mm.
Um, but uh, but that's a whole nother win. That is a whole nother win, and it gets the same like yes out of me. Um,
Yeah.
that training does and that kind of stuff. So,
Mm.
um, and I think that's just like being present and understanding that is the most important thing that I could possibly do at that time. And so
Yeah.
I'll have to keep learning, keep balancing. It's ongoing, always changing,
Yeah.
but I think that's having a grip. It's just like whatever we're doing, like this podcast right now, I'm trying to give my best to you guys for this,
Mm.
and whatever comes, um, like you're gonna get the most back, right? If you're giving your best.
Right. 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 One time I heard a quote uh, by someone that said the the fastest way to win at life or to be successful, whether it's finances or other goals or whatever you're looking at, is to just do the right thing as often as possible, to do your best with what you're given as often as possible and try to do the right thing. And like when you look back on your life, a lot of times those snowball and roll into such bigger things. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. So, man, I'm so, so grateful, Rafael, for being here. Can you please tell everybody where to find you? I know you have your amazing Facebook group, Instagram. Tell us all the good details, website. Where can we find more of you?
Yeah, sure. So my handle is pretty easy. Lovato, like Demi Lovato, same last name, not related. Although I might joke around and say she was my cousin, and I'm the one that got her to do jiu-jitsu. Um, but Lovato, JR BJJ,
Yes.
um, on Instagram, Facebook, all the stuff. And so that's social media. And then, my academy, I have my own stuff for the academy too. Um, Lovato School of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA, or Lovato BJJ and MMA. We're in Oklahoma
Mm.
City. You can find us at okbjj.com. We're not the most common place for people to travel through, but uh, but if you ever find yourself in the middle of the country, please, everyone is always welcome to come visit me here. And I have the timeless jiu-jitsu. It's kind of like
Yeah.
my way to give back to everybody that may not be my exact student, or
Mm.
train at one of my schools. It's just like the timeless jiu-jitsu mindset, forever student, forever teacher, forever competitor, and each one makes us better at the other. And the whole point is just to be able to do what we love for the rest of our lives. And
Mm.
and that's what I'm going to be doing and trying to continue learning and giving back at the same time. And so you can follow Timeless Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram, all that stuff. And I have a Facebook group, almost 13,000 people in there. And
I'm one of
share.
them.
Yes,
I
you
love
are.
that Facebook group.
You're one of the famous people in there. Um,
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
yeah.
she. Uh, I share a lot of extra stuff in there. I do lives, videos, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like one more step. And you can always just join my website. I have a website with all my stuff on there, guest instructors as well. I get all my friends involved. But timelessjiu-jitsu.com. So I think that covers everything. But yeah, thank you so much for
Look,
having
I
me.
told you
And
guys this man has a lot going on. I tried to tell you in the beginning. Well, and I know you're going to say thank you, but before, just in case you guys don't know where to go after hearing all that information, my best advice would be to go to his Instagram, Lovato Jr, BJJ? Lovato Jr or
yeah,
JJ? Lovato
BJJ.
Jr, BJJ. And he definitely has a link in his bio that will
Yeah.
lead you to a lot of these places. And that way you can
Yes.
also find his fanatics instruction. You can find all the information that he has through his Instagram. That's where I always go if I need to spy on him. Oh, we have a
Sorry,
Sula moment.
Just coming in here to say we'll put everything in the description. So
That's
you
Okay.
right.
can
I know how to do that
make it
now.
simple.
I'll put everything, all the links in there so you guys can find all his stuff, because anything you can learn from him, you're going to want to learn from him. And also to stay tuned on all the new stuff you have coming out too. I'll be on the lookout for that. It'll be great.
Awesome.
Awesome. So last
Thank
but
you,
not
ladies.
least, guys, obviously, thank you, Rafael. That was so incredible. And last but not least, if you guys found this podcast helpful, inspiring, entertaining, whatever it may be, got some tips out of it, make sure you guys leave a review. It does a lot to support the podcast. You guys can subscribe, share the link, send it to your friends. I know I'm probably gonna have to re-listen to it myself too. It's interesting podcasting because I get so into your stories, and then I'm like, wait, I need to make sure that I stay on top of my questions. So I'm gonna listen back to it to myself to make sure that I hear all the good juicy details and all the good takeaways that I can take away. So make sure you guys share that and like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Can you even like on podcast? No, they can't like on here. Oh, on YouTube you can like. All right, you can like. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. All right. Any last words, Rafael, before we sign off here?
No, just thank you. Thanks for all the listeners. And that's it. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And I think it's amazing seeing everything that you're doing. Looking forward to getting you back here when you're all healthy and ready to roll around some more. And that's it. All the best. And one day I'm going to have you on my podcast too.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I will be there. Thank you so much. See you guys next
Thank
time.
you. Take care.
All right. We're done.